Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. A few days ago, I sat down with Chloe Davies, my guest for this episode. I'm going to tell you now, I was not ready for this conversation. And actually, I tend to record my intros and outros straight after. But this has taken me a few days. And because I really wanted to sit with the conversation, I'm going to put a trigger warning out there to begin with. This conversation covers a lot. It covers mental health, thoughts of suicide, loss, and some quite harrowing life incidents that Chloe has been through. But I will say this, I've known Chloe for a couple of years and she never ever fails to impress me. Chloe is the CEO, founder, and architect of It Takes a Village, and you can hear a little bit about that shortly. She is also part of the UK Black Pride team. She's the director of the London LGBTQ Community Centre. She also supports Queer London Fashion Week, and she is an ambassador for Mental Health First Aid England. That's quite a list. But she has a wealth of experience in marketing, advertising, branding, and it shines through. So I really excited for you to find out more about Chloe's story. Many people know her. She's very well known in circles around diversity, equity, inclusion, and again, advertising, marketing, and comms. But yeah, this is a beautiful conversation. Sit tight, look after yourself while listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Cheers. Hey, Chloe, welcome to Pause and Rewind. I am so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for asking me. I am really looking forward. You're one of the nicest people I like talking to.
I love talking to you. Since we met like a couple of years ago back in 2022, I've loved following your journey. I could listen to you talk all day whenever you are on a podcast or at an event. Like you really, that moment at Dr. Lady Phil's graduation was so special, and meeting you was such a joy. And I'm so grateful that we've maintained a friendship from that.
Definitely. It was an unforgettable experience, especially to witness her have that moment. I was honored to even be able to be there to bear witness, and everybody that was there and celebrated was so amazing. And then just to meet you and to have this connection, like you said, maintain a friendship and show up in completely different spaces in each other's world. And whenever we see each other, it's like massive hug, even if we don't get to speak to each other. And then, yeah, but yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, whenever I walk into a room and see your smile, I feel a belonging and comfort. Like, so yeah, let's kick off. What does the world look like for Chloe Davies right now?
The world right now is grown and sexy. They're my two words for
Grown and
grown and
sexy.
sexy for 2024. I really feel like me, full me, whole me, everything abundantly about me for the very first time in about 20 odd years. So yeah, I grown and sexy, just um I feel like I'm really owning my shit. I feel like I am just existing as me, good days, bad days. At the beginning of this year, I really made a conscious decision after a very bad last part of 2023, like I think a lot of us had, to change my mindset. And I basically told myself, if I want to feel different, I have to think different. And so every day it's just 1% more than a day before. Even if it's a 5%, 10%, -5, just give 1%. And I think since then, everything has kind of fallen into place and all the pieces of the puzzle are there. And yeah, it's a grown and sexy picture.
Grown and sexy. I love those two words, and I do remember us having a conversation. It was a good few months ago where you had made a conscious effort to choose joy. You
Yeah,
had made a conscious effort to move towards that. I
yeah,
had a similar thing after burnout last year. I made a conscious decision to stop strategizing, stop overthinking, and choose the word bounce. And
yeah,
actually, it's kind of given me a lot of freedom. So I can imagine that those terms, grown and sexy, have done the same.
definitely. And yeah, like I mean, life is hard for so many people in so many different ways. And I really feel like I needed to reclaim joy for myself and what it was on my terms. And I'm just, yeah, living in my favorite colors, which is, brights and yellows and yeah, just joyful.
Joyful. We share a love of color,
Yeah, we do.
which is amazing.
I'm still coming to
How
steal those trainers behind you.
I've got quite a few. It takes a village. How much of that creating it takes a village has become part of that being feeling you in moving
Oh
forward?
my God, so It Takes a Village has been in my head for 7 years. Like it had different names and different guises. And like it's like a relay race. We had a bit of a false start last year, although we founded March 31st, 2023. And I think it is the definition of the title. Like I grew up my whole life with the term "it takes a village to raise a child." And especially when I think about it through the lens of Black women, like I didn't get anywhere on my own. It's been collective community, collective people, collaboration. And so it takes a village has really become um, I think where I went wrong last year was that it was very much focused on the me and the I, and this year is very much focused on the we and the collective. And that's the foundations that we've built, the people that have supported me. I mean, my parents have been incredible, the community, Laurelie White, who's my chief hype woman, like just I didn't really realize how many people wanted to stand beside me or just supported me until sometimes you build something finally for yourself and you ask. And then the response back has just been, yeah, joyful and heartwarming. And so I think it is all of me and yeah, all of we. And I'm not the monolith on Black women in advertising, but I know some really, really incredible ones and being able to work in collaboration or point people into their direction or have conversations with them through It Takes a Village or work together as yes, it's sisterhood in all of its abundance.
Beautiful. Whenever I watch you on an event, whether it's one that I'm hosting or not, there's always mic drop moments
Oh,
like
go away.
pow 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 pow, and all of me and all of we. Like that is t-shirt slogan
Oh my God.
material right there.
Yeah.
Why is it takes a village so important?
It Takes a Village Collective. We're a global hub for Black women in Adland, advertising, media marketing, and comms, with a very clear mission that by 2028, 1 in 5 people in Adland will be a Black woman. And it's really about the untapped, unseen, unshowcased, uncelebrated, and often unsupported strategic potential of Black women in our business. There is nothing like a Black woman. We are the source. And so, what we can bring, what we do bring to advertising, Adland collectively, how we can adapt and tell stories, how we strategize what account management looks like how we can do so many different things has not always been given. Sorry, it's 11:11, so I just had to stop for that. But is but the opportunity is boundless, and we're not always given that opportunity in the industry to be able to do that. One, oftentimes because it's unrecognized, but two, because there isn't an infrastructure that is built that says this is what succession planning through the nuanced lens of Black women look like. And this isn't something that is new. We do this when it comes to parents. We look at it through flexible working. We make adjustments when it comes to neurodivergence or disability. I could keep going on. Like there are so many ways that we look at this. And yet, when we look at this through the lens of women, and there's still so much work to do for Black women, it's not really given the flowers that it should, the support and the foundation that it should. And so I was the first head of social impact for Lucky Generals, which was a great role, first of its kind in the UK. I was able to do such incredible work, Virgin Atlantic, Amazon, Co-op, Wagamama, I had such a wonderful time and an incredible privilege to be able to be in that role. And yet, some of the things that I faced in that role should never have happened. And it wasn't a new story. When I looked to my counterparts, other Black women like myself in senior roles within Adland, either couldn't find them, or when I did, they were broken versions of themselves. And that wasn't really okay to me. When I looked at mid-level Black women who had been left stagnant in those positions because there was no succession plan, there was no clear retention plan, and then the abundance of Black women that live in our junior roles. But again, same story, different viewpoint. And I think it just became the sum of a whole host of different things that I have done. I've worked in a lot of different industries throughout my time. And in finance, this isn't any different. In law, this isn't any different. In construction, this isn't any different. And I am a cultural strategist at heart, and really just thought, okay, how can I use some of the things that I know? How can I use some of the things that other people have shared with me in confidence or shared with me out loud? How can I not put a negativity to the struggle, but actually help give our collective struggle a voice and really do something that can help change this industry for the better. And yeah, I think especially why I said being in that role was really poignant to my why and what is the impact of my why. And then how can we collectively make that impact? So, we started with data because there is no data that exists collectively that looks at Black women in the workplace in any one industry. We do it sector by sector, but not across an entire industry.
Mm.
And so we created the We Can't All Be Lying Global Insight Study. It's live now until the end of August. It's global, and we've built it through an ethnicity and a gender pay gap reporting. So what it will allow us to do for the very first time anywhere in the world is say, this is what equity in the workplace truly looks like for Black women across an entire industry based on not only pre-existing information, but we've asked all of the questions. And most importantly, because of the way that I built this together with the Diversity Standards Collective, who have been such great supporters of us, and we work together in collaboration in a lot of different ways. It Takes a Village owns the IP, so we can also say to Black women, from a safeguarding perspective, no one will share your data, no one will, your IP is not compromised in that we retain all of this. It will only stay under Black women, and the work that we will do together will try and be as safeguarding as much as we possibly can, because we've got your consent, we've got your permission. This is the body of work that we do, not only online but in person around the world with incredible people around the world who've already been doing this work.
I just think it's so amazing how you have harnessed all your decades of experience, skill, and talent, but also your relationships, and your insight, and it's no surprise to me that all those people have got behind you to pull this off. And actually, can I just hone in on the title architect?
Yeah.
You're CEO and founder of It
Yeah,
Takes a
yeah, yeah.
Village, but actually
For a short time. You can't
you
be.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
you've kind of you're rolling with the title of
Mhm.
architect. And when I first saw that, I was really intrigued. And actually, having listened to you now go in detail, I can appreciate why you've chosen that term.
Yeah,
What was your thinking behind it?
so I call myself an architect because I am not I'm not a builder. I know my own strengths, and I guess this is where the like strategy part comes in, right? But what I have the ability to be able to do is to know the different pieces or know the different people. Like when they say your network is your net worth, I really understood that based on like where I came from, and I know we're going to talk about that. And so it was like, oh, I know this person over here, and they do this part. So yeah, we need that part. And I know this person over here, and that's what an architect does. They bring all the different pieces that you need to build a strong foundation, to build a beautiful building for, a structure to truly exist. And you can then have a builder, you can then have a designer, you can have all of these different things. I think that's where my skill set exists best. So yeah, I've called myself an architect in that perspective for a very, very long time because it really, really made sense to me of like, oh, okay, this is really what you do. And I think, yeah, now for the very first time, I'm actually just using the skill the way I'm supposed to. Not that I haven't used it before, but like with really, really clear intention.
I love that. I love that. Okay, grown and sexy architect. We're getting some like big vibes here. I
I'm doing,
love
I'm
it.
doing, I'm doing my definitions of me.
I love it. Well, this is about you,
Yeah,
and it's about your story. I'm super excited to dive into it. Chloe, are you ready to pause and rewind?
I am ready.
Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Chloe.
Oh, okay. I was really thinking about this, like how far back do I go? So I am the eldest daughter of two really wonderful African parents. So my parents are Donald and Nicola, and I come from a very big African family. Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, got people in the States, like we're all over. Um, but I think especially being the eldest, um, in a big family and the eldest girl. And I grew up very unconventional to what was um, the norm at the time. So my mum was the first Black department manager for John Lewis Partnership. She worked for John Lewis she actually worked for Peter Jones for 38 years.
Wow.
And my dad worked at what was HMSO. It's now, I think it's called Nine Elms Lane. And it was Her Majesty's Stationery Office. And my dad was the stay-at-home parent, and my mum was the breadwinner. My dad had a great job, but my dad did a week of days, a week of nights, and a week off. And my mum obviously did shift work at Peter Jones. So we talk about this as a family, but I don't actually remember my mum until I was about 5. My dad was the person that would do the trips and ferries to school, and we would go to a childminder. We grew up in Walthamstow, we go to a childminder in Black Horse Road with my mum, and then that was like where my primary school, like my first school, nursery was, around there. But yeah, it was like just a sense of pride. I had a really great, great family. The best place in our house was the kitchen. My mum has got two sisters, but my uncle had 4 daughters, and there's a lot of women in my family. So it was like little Chloe with big ears would sit there in the kitchen, just minding my own business, like, but absorbing and listening. I think that's where my love for gossip has come from because my family are like, oh, just bring it in. And I'm like, I'd always hear everything and then just have to pretend. And I think because I was so well behaved, they just let me stay there. And so I think I was more informed for a lot of different things. But yeah, I went to school. I had a really great granddad on my dad's side. His name was Arthur. And my granddad was an accountant, but we secretly think in the family that he wanted to be a headmaster. And so from the age of 5, they lived in Colchester, and my brother and my cousins, we would go to Colchester in the holidays and the half term. And typical African parents, the education is key. So was having lessons from 5. We'd do French, English, maths, We upgraded to like algebra. My granddad was a stickler for education. So as I went through the school system, and we would go and obviously would do homework and stuff. And, you know, it's one of those definite African parents that like it's an A or there's something wrong. And he would buy the same textbooks that I would have at school. Like I would go to my granddad's study and then there would be the same textbook that I had. So I couldn't even like fake my homework. He would actually know where I was at in terms of like what the curriculum was telling. And he's like, okay, so we're going to go to the next chapter so you're prepared. At the time, did not wash with me at all. Although now I'm very, very grateful.
Can imagine.
I'm very, very grateful. And so at 8, I am classed as a gifted child. So I had the reading age of a 16-year-old, very, very high IQ. I got moved up through the school system. So because of where mum and dad worked, even though we lived in Walthamstow, it gave us the ability to go to school in the borough that your parents worked. Back then in the 80s, catchment area wasn't really a thing. And so my brother and I went to Holy Trinity Primary School, which was one end of the King's Road. And I got moved up from year 4, I did year 5. From year 5, I did year 6. I passed all of my exams. And because I'm born on the 1st of September and the school year runs from the 1st September to the 31st of August, they wouldn't allow me to go to secondary school a year early. They weren't prepared to change the system for me back then, um, which I found really, really frustrating. But that first point at 8, I think, was my first real key thing, because my dad had what we call the racism chat, which was, Chloe, you're black, you're female, it's going to be harder for you than it is for anybody else. So don't grow up with a chip on your shoulder. Like there's nothing that you can't do unless you try. And I think that really pushed my like, I'm moving away from my peers and a group of friends that I've been with for the last 3 years. And now I'm with a new group and they're older. I'd always navigated to older people, but it became really a toxic thing at school when I had to repeat a year and then I went back to a group of friends that I hadn't been in the classroom with for
Mm.
2 or so odd years. And a, I think I've made peace with it, but at the time, I had teachers that, we know that you know the answer, so put your hand down. So I basically did nothing for a year, and got into a really bad headspace. I, tried to fit back in with friends who didn't really have much in common anymore. And I think my people pleasing really like turned up because I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to fit in. And ended up being bullied and, a few other things. I wasn't also in that trying to fit in the best version of myself that I could have been. And I got into 2 schools. I got into Greycoats, which I really wanted to go to, and they had this like gorgeous grey tweed. And I'm going to come back to the why bit. And then I got into Lady Margaret School for Girls, which was a more prestigious school. It was an ex-private school, and I remember being on the train. My dad and I had been summoned to Colchester to come and see my granddad to go through your options. And on the way back, my granddad had been very clear. I think you should go to Lady Margaret's. I'll help pay for your school uniform. It was the more prestigious, and I think for him that was really where he wanted to see me go. Um, and I really wanted to go to Greycoats. A lot of the people that I was genuinely friends with at my primary school were going to Greycoats. The headmistress, I loved her, she loved me, and it was really diverse. There were a lot of Black girls that were going to go to school, and I really needed that. Holy Trinity was really diverse, and I'd had that, and Lady Margaret's was not that case. Um, and my dad said to me, oh, where do you want to go? And I said, well, and in my head, I was like, I really want to go to Greycoats. But because the whole family wanted me to go to Lady Margaret's, and remember that like people pleasing, I just wanted everybody to be happy. It's the eldest. You have a lot of pressure on you to represent. I said, well, I can go to Lady Margaret's. And my dad said, are you sure? And I was like, mm-hmm. And we talk about it now. You know, my dad says that's the moment that I should have stepped in and said, actually, you're going to Greycoats, because I knew that's where you wanted to go. But, um, I wanted to make my family proud. Um, both my parents. So, yeah, at that time, both my parents um, are fashion designers by trade. That's my mum went to Bournemouth. She did textiles. And my dad, he was the designer for a shop called Carnaby Cavern in Carnaby Street. It was like made to measure for the cool cats and the musicians and the celebs. And he tells me stories of whenever anyone wanted to give him tips, he would say, no, just give me the best seats to your show. So for like our family inheritance, my brother's got his first edition comics. I actually would like those, but it is what it is. But I'm a Marvel stan. But I've got, and we went through them one day. My dad's got like all the original programs and the ticket stubs to like Bob Marley at the Lyceum and just incredible, like Jimi Hendrix, like incredible shows that he had the opportunity to go to. And that was like the community that he was immersed in. So my whole life I've grown up with like fashion and music and that kind of cultural side, especially somewhere like Peter Jones. That was also that element. And I ended up going to Lady Margaret's, and that really like just defined another part of my existence because it was an incredible school. And, I say that it was the best 7 years of training that I ever had for the world, really. But my class was 66 girls. And of the 66 girls, 60 were white and six were girls of color. And so it really was this like disconnect from all I'd known up until that point. It was very much rooted in academic status and being aligned to something. Because I was the eldest in the class, and I remember I got used to being around older people. I've been doing it at home around my elders. That I'd made friends with a lot of the older girls in other years, and they used to have a summer party before the term started. And that was also a time when the new pupils could come and like get to mix and you'd have a tour and stuff. So I actually started the school year knowing a lot of people, some of the friends that I'd had previously, the girls that I'd known previously in the year who'd all got to go, a couple had gone to Lady Margaret. So I kind of had this like um in which wasn't intentional, but I make friends easy. So it's
Yeah.
like, it was a nice thing. But again, that kind of like bullying part kind of stuck a little bit. And I, you know, I like being, this is gonna sound weird. I like being not of service, but it's all I've known. I worked in retail. I've seen mum in retail. I've been around those relationships where it's about that kind of bond and that customer communication. So for me, going to school and being in those kinds of situations wasn't like, people used to call me a swat and you're a suck up and teacher's pet. But for me, that was just like, that's what I knew. Like, I think
Mm.
I say now that I'm a reformed people pleaser, but I also, you have to remember the culture that I came from, and especially Nigerian first daughter. We are taught, how to be of service. Like, when we would have family parties, I mean, you go and get this, and you have to go and greet my aunties, and you help make sure that my elders that they've got their plate of food first. So for me, that was just normal. It wasn't like, I was doing anything wrong, and I went into school with that attitude, and it wasn't always understood. And so when you don't understand something, people will try and destroy it. And I think I just became a quieter version of myself over the years until we got to 14. And I am just going to do a cautionary warning for anybody that's listening. And we're going to talk about suicide and some child trauma. But my cousin, who's my best friend in the whole world, and my elder male cousin, our family used to call us Pinky and Perky, we were 4 years apart. And really, he was like my big brother. Like we're basically, non-identical twins. That's really how this kind of just worked. And we didn't have the same family dynamic for a lot of different reasons. And we'd had a similar path. He had gone to a state school, got moved to a private school. There weren't many versions of himself where he could see himself reflected. It wasn't very diverse. He really struggled. And he was older than me and the eldest boy grandchild, so a lot of pressure. But we shared that in different ways. And I was 14, and he was 18, and he just got a new car, and life was not kind. And so he made a decision to complete suicide, which was really, really tough
Hmm.
because he was my person, like unequivocally my person. If you believe in soulmates, he absolutely conjoined. I was really not trying to cry today. And My whole world collapsed. And I had a really strange dream because I've always had this kind of gift from about 8, where I could just, we have a running joke in my family. My grandma was psychic. My dad just had his gut, and Chloe just has her knowing. Like she just knows stuff sometimes. She's not supposed to know. I have no control over it, although I have a better guard. Like my energy is better. Um, and I remember that my his older sister came to our house, and she was just talking, and my brain started whirring. And I woke up in the middle of the night, had the dream, worst dream. Um, and I woke up quite emotional and crying and just said, he's not here anymore. I can't feel him. The phone in our house rang, and I raced to get the phone. My mum had to run outside into the garden to listen to my dad. And obviously, like the news has confirmed that he had passed away. And I, was quite distraught. I said, I knew. And so, as people pass away, all the family come together, and my family came together from all around the world, and we're at my aunt and uncle's house, and everyone's asking why, especially when it's a child, like why, what happened, what could we have done? And my dad and my mum said, maybe we should ask Chloe. And I've come from a family where I've always been given the space to be myself. I've always been championed. I've always been elevated. My voice has always been heard from small. Uh, and so I spoke my truth. I spoke as much of his truth that I knew that I had permission to share. And it was way too hard for my family to hear.
Hmm.
And they told me to be quiet. And when your family tells you to be quiet, you listen, like, they're your family. That I didn't think that they were wrong. And, the adults had stopped adulting. I stopped being a kid at 14. I absolutely became an adult because everybody else behind me, especially as the eldest, was struggling. Their parents weren't behaving in the way that they were supposed to behave. Um, and I kind of, yeah, I did a duty that wasn't mine to hold, but somebody at the time had to do it, and um, changed my whole life.
That is a lot for someone so young to go through. Never mind it, never mind the disappointment that many kids have to go to about not going to the school that they want, but those early conversations around racism, losing your cousin, having to grow up so quickly. What did you think? Do you remember what you thought about the world at that time? Because we don't necessarily
Oh,
maturity, we don't necessarily have the maturity and the language to communicate that, though you might have. But would you remember what you felt?
I'm lost. I remember, oh my God, I really didn't know I was going to do this today. I remember, especially at that time when we were at his parents' place, and I would go for walks around the neighborhood and talk to him in the sky. Oh my God, Neil, I didn't know you could do this. And I would talk to him in the sky and be
Take
like,
your time
what,
by all
what do
means.
I do? What do I do now? Like, how do I, how do I continue to exist? if you're not here, because look at what's happened. Like, look at, everybody's broken. Everything is broken. Like, he was our glue. He was um, the funniest, cheekiest, loveliest, like just such a great soul. And yeah, I was so angry. I'm still angry. I mean, he hears my anger on a regular basis because I'm like, I get it. And this is my own personal thing. Everybody has their own viewpoint. And I really do understand the limits with which a person truly has to go before they make that choice. And it is their individual choice. It's
Mhm.
not for me. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it,
Yeah.
but I can respect that it's their choice. And I would rage at him that we could have found another way. Like where there was another way, there were other things that could have come from this. And yeah, just overwhelmingly lost. And I think for me it wasn't new. I unfortunately had experienced it before. So I strangely, and this is my own coping mechanism and trauma wherever, I kind of just, especially having had, I think, the disappointment from school, um, just, put my best foot forward and kind of leaned into the advice and the support that he had given me then. And like, keep going, we'll find a way. And I think that's what I remember telling myself is like, keep going and we'll find a way. And maybe everything happens for a reason, and maybe there was a reason for this. And I remember my cousin Dominic and his wife Lucy when they turned up. Remember that knowing?
Mhm.
Um, I, randomly, we laugh about this now. Randomly, I went, "How far along are you, Lucy?" And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "No, but," and she went, "How do you know? We haven't told anybody." And I like the circle of life and the universe and the rhythm. I'm a Virgo, and very much a child of nature. And I think the moment that I learned that you know, what would be my cousin Solomon, who embodies all of my cousin Wesley's spirit, I was kind of like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I kind of, this is the circle of life. And yeah, I've experienced the circle of life in far too many ways. I've lost a lot of people at a very young age. I understand disappointment and loss. And so from that perspective, yeah, I kind of just understood in my own knowing that some of my life journey is not going to be what I would expect, but that there is always a reason, and there will always be a way, and there'll always be a why. And again, because I'm a why child, it was just to always get to the heart of things. And that, I knew that from 14, I had someone, whatever your beliefs are, I chose to believe that I had someone who now had no choice but to be looking out for me because
Yeah.
he left me behind. And it really did at times feel like I'd been left behind. And I think there's something so much in being family members left behind. It's something that you can't explain, and it really does change your trajectory and change how you view the world and life. And so, yeah, I completely broke in the sense that I lost my voice. And by that, I mean, is that, I stopped talking about everything, my pain, my joy, like, my family were the group that was supposed to keep me the most safe.
Mm.
And
They silenced you.
they'd silenced me. So, that silence stayed for 10 years. Um,
Wow, that's a
yeah.
long time to carry that for.
I didn't, and I had therapy and so many different things in between, but I didn't have my person and I didn't know who to talk to or trust or all of those kinds of things. I would find kindness in strangers and yet have the dichotomy of to go home and not be able to talk about how I think or feel. Um, and yeah, I still existed. I still lived life. I think a tiny shade of myself because in that place of not belonging and then trying to find places, spaces, people where I could belong with, belong to from then until 24. And my body basically said, "You are not listening. We've been trying to tell you for a long time." So I had a full physical, mental, and emotional breakdown. Um, I was working for John Lewis at the time because I had been since I was 16. Mum and Dad said, "We cut your pocket money, you start on Saturday." Uh,
Right.
there are a couple of rules. Don't embarrass me, don't chat my business. And they were my saving grace. I'd moved to Manchester. We'd opened, I was working at John Lewis Trafford. Um, and they came knocking on my door and said, "Where are you? Are you okay?" And I wasn't. I went to hospital, tried me on antidepressants, and they work for some. For me, it didn't work. It went back to the heart of my why. And what they did do was they said, "Look, through occupational health and partner discounts, you can have access to free therapy. You can have 6 to 12 sessions." And I had 13. That's why I have a 13. That's why I got
Yeah.
13.
Chloe showing me a tattoo for those listening.
So it's a tattoo of a hand holding an envelope, and 13 is on the top. It actually needs to be redone. But it was this idea that you make your own luck. 13 is supposed to be such an unlucky number, so it's to constantly remind me that I make my own luck. Um, and my first counselor, Diane, was incredible because she taught me how to listen to myself again for the very first time and to hear myself, to cut out my bullshit, and to also recognize that I don't like I don't live with it. It lives with me. Like I am in charge of how much power I give
Yeah.
to this or not. And so that's why I call myself a mental health survivor. I've gone on to have worse episodes than that very first one, but she helped give me the foundation of tools
Yeah.
to recognize what they really are and what they're really not, and to have that guidance. And for the very first time at 24, I really felt like, oh, okay, there she is. There's little Chloe.
There she is.
You know,
Yeah.
that's where she's gone. Um, and I think from then to now, I've just tried to encourage her to it's okay, it's safe, you can like come out. I think that's why when people ask me or say to me like, "Oh my God, but you do so much, you exist in so many different places," to me that makes sense because they were all the places that made me feel safe.
I've got so many questions, Chloe. I'm gonna try and whistle through them and remember them. Firstly, courageous conversations with your family. Like obviously, being silenced in that way at a time when you're 14, you don't have the maturity to deal with that heavy situation. But what you're trying to do is bring people comfort, and you've got this gift. You've got this knowing that you're just trying to express, right, to give people comfort and to provide an answer, probably because you're trying to figure out an answer in your head and you got this answer. Did you find that sense of belonging with your family again?
Yes, it took years. um I When I was 30, oh my God, I honestly, I don't, it's not like a trauma thing. It's just the sum of my life and the experience. I've been out since I was 15. I'm bisexual. And on my 30th birthday, my mum outed me. She didn't do it on purpose. It was like just a turn of phrase, but we're in the middle of a restaurant and the restaurant went silent. Like I understand now why I work at advertising. The restaurant went silent. It's like rolling moss. And my dad
Um,
said, my dad said, "Oh, I always knew you were a bit of a head nest." And then it was just like deathly silent.
Wow.
So deathly silent. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and hang out with my friends now. Goodbye. Um, um, yeah, so like after my 30th, I basically my mum's mum, my Nigerian grandma, she had gone back home. And so I basically had a conversation with her and I was like, they're driving me nuts. So I moved into her house in Leighton and I was like, I'll look after your home while you go away. And I say to my parents that I filed for divorce, but my parents say that it was a trial separation. And I moved out. I'd been back and forth. I'd been in, Manchester and come back home. And I moved out, moved into my grandma's. And my parents would come 1 day a week for 1 hour each separately. And we would have lunch and we would rebuild our relationship as parents and child because there had been a role reversal over the years.
Yeah.
And so it gave us the opportunity to really establish not only those relationships, but for us to see each other. The dynamic of any parent's relationship when you learn what that truly is as you evolve and you have more language and you see things. And I always say to my parents, I'm like, why am I the piggy in the middle of you two?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm seeing the architect,
they
Chloe.
would always talk to me about stuff, and I'm like, to know this. But
Yeah.
because of the role that I'd had from 14, this is why. And so we had to reestablish all of that. And thankfully we did. Like it took a really long time, but we were all intentional about really building it. And I had the ability for my parents to really see me. I had the ability to really see my parents, to get to know them one on one. And I'm jumping around and doing back and forth, but my when HMSO was privatized, my dad moved to Belgium. He got a job with Hewlett Packard, and so he would only come home every 2 to 3 weeks. And my brother would have Wednesdays, and I would have Thursdays, and we'd have dad dates. And he and my brother would go to the same spots. I'm not. I know who I am. I will take my bouginess. My dad would take me, I'd make me go to a different restaurant, a different country, a different cuisine. Like a part of why I have such an amazing palate is because we would go to all these different places and have these like dad-daughter chats and really talk about the world because that was the only time that we had together before we'd have to go back to work. And obviously my
Mm.
parents had their time. So yeah, we were healing a whole host of things. And then I have really bad polycystic ovaries. When I was 25, basically uh, polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS. A normal woman's ovaries are about the size of a small golf ball. If you have PCOS, that's more like they're double the size. And basic biology is that, when you're experiencing a period, egg goes round, breaks apart, you have a period. With PCOS, it doesn't do that. Sometimes as it's going traveling through your system, it collects and collects and collects. And in its worst cases, you have a cyst that can explode. And that's how I learned that I had PCOS, because that's actually what happened when I was 25. And I was in Manchester and they thought I had appendicitis. I'd been in the hospital for 3 days. And on the third day, stopped bleeding. They're getting ready to take me down to theatre. I was actually on a surgical ward. And someone went, maybe we should do an ultrasound. And then they said that I've got PCOS. And so I, sorry, speak of the devil, my dad's trying to call me. And then it basically messed up my cycle so that for 8 years I didn't really have a cycle, didn't really have periods. And so they basically said if you ever want to have kids, it will end up having to be via IVF. That's the only way that we think we'll be able
Mm.
to help you. And I think the sum of all of who I am, that comfort, that maternal mum instinct, that like bring family together, changed the whole dynamic of my life because this idea that I would ever have a family went away. And another loss, but also a time to self-reflect and really look at me and invest in me. And I had this great time. So when I was 33, and by some miracle, because I had had my first gynecologist appointment in 8 years, and unbeknownst to anyone, I was already pregnant. Um, and so my eldest son, Miles became like a real miracle baby. And I moved home, home, because there was a possibility that I was navigating a journey of single parenthood.
Right.
And it was the best thing that ever happened for my family because I got to witness my parents as parents for the very, very first time that I had lost from 14.
Right. That's
I got to,
beautiful.
I got to rewatch them be the best versions of themselves, which helped make them the best versions to me by watching them with their grandson.
Yeah.
Um,
Can
so
imagine there was so much healing involved in that. You have two little ones. I'm not going to talk to you too much about parenting because I know you're always
it's
them.
okay.
But how much of your experiences, the good and the bad, have you learned from in terms of raising your boys?
I I guess that whole story that I've just told you now is my why. I have two versions of him.
Yeah.
I understand I mean, I'm a firm believer that children are a gift. Not everybody has the gift of being a parent. A child is not a mini you or another version of you. They are a child and they truly are a gift. It's just your job to help steer until they can take the controls themselves. So I really understood that my children were sent to me, and my job is to protect and love them of all strangeness. Although, as I'm talking to you, I'm seeing the dots truly being connected. That my eldest son, Miles, is autistic and nonverbal. And my second son, Theo, definitely has ADHD, is somewhere on the autism spectrum, um, and is selective of how and when he speaks. So I am, in essence, their voice, which is a strange turnabout
Wow. Yeah,
for all the things.
absolutely.
Yeah, for all the things. I never actually stopped to think about it that often. Um, and so, yeah, being mother to sons, being mother to, although my children are biracial, they've stole my whole face twice. So, black sons. I really understood my job and my role in this. And yeah, it's a joy. Absolutely, it has challenges, but I have wonderfully sensitive, emotionally tactile, emotionally intelligent boys. I'm raising my sons to be in love with their emotion, to really harness it. We're all emotional beings. Uh, Boys, men are not given the opportunity to really tap into that. It's become one of my life missions to help continue to do that because that's where I came from. I came from a truly emotional dad, a wonderfully sensitive, emotional brother, a courageous, emotional cousin. The men in my family are just as incredible as the women in my family. And so, my legacy is raising two young Black men to be that. And I don't say my children are superheroes because of their neurodivergence. I say my kids are superheroes because um, what they have given me as their mother is a magic that I can't explain, but it's just truly a joyful gift that I don't take for granted in any capacity whatsoever. I learned so much about myself, about my family, their ability to be able to heal, but to laugh. Like I say it all the time when anyone asks me, you know, to all the internet aunties, I'm like, come and get your nephews because I'm tired. Um, but, I'm joking because they are, amazing. My son, I'll only be this little and this small, and I've got mummy's boys and, my son, Theo every morning without fail, if he hasn't snuck in the middle of the night, you know, I lift up the covers and he comes in and he just has the biggest smile on his face. He'll go back to sleep. And then in the morning, he'll do the same thing, like their joy and their smile. If I smile a lot, like they smile 10,000 times more, and what that will do for other people, what it does for us as their family. We're so lucky. So yeah, it's full circle, continue to
I
become
love it.
full circle.
There's still so much I want to ask you about. I've got so
I
many
knew this was going to
questions
happen.
left. I knew, yeah, I want to say we were never going to have a good
Yeah.
conversation. Are you still good for time?
I am yours.
Before I ask you around finding your voice in inclusion, I'd love to know, do you still tap into your gift of knowing? Is it is it is it is it
I
is it
can't turn it
something
off
that
now.
you can't turn it off?
I can't turn it
Interesting,
off now. I really couldn't.
fascinating. And are you able to sometimes switch off from trying to find the reason and the why?
It's an active practice. I really have to. Some really dark and horrible things happened last year. With, you talk about your burnout. I was at my most broken, in ways that I would never like to experience again. And honestly, whilst I would never, having gone through it and being a family member left behind, I would never do it. Um, but has my mind taken me to the darkest of places to contemplate? Absolutely, like that, I'm not gonna lie. And my in that silence, because I had basically been in a situation where I had to silence myself, which
Hmm.
is the worst thing that you can do for someone who's gone through what I've been through, because that's what was safest. Um, my gift got very loud, and in a way that like I have never expected, and it just went, hi, hi mate, like hello, are you here? um what those 6 7 months from like June of last year to January of this year, what it allowed me to do was to really talk to it and to harness and to kind of understand what it is and what it's not, and to build some very clear boundaries. um I have bigger shoulders to carry it than I had at 8. At 8, it was really scary.
Mm.
Everybody has something, everybody has some gift in their life. I really understand mine. Um, and so I just kind of tried to protect it and take care of it and have a one-to-one conversation. Because once upon a time there was, the best way I can describe it's like an energy field that was always on. And it would be like wide, and I had to learn how to like pull it back and give it a boundary. Sometimes it just pings for no reason whatsoever. Like I was at dinner yesterday and I was just talking to someone, and then suddenly they started sharing their whole life story, and I had to tell myself, "Can you stop this? I'm just trying to eat my food." Um, but other times it's the best thing because it allows me to do the work that I do. It's like anything, you just have to practice. And I just have to practice with mine to like for it to not be so loud. Not silenced, but just not so loud.
Keep it in check.
Yeah, like anything, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that, for sharing for sharing your gift, and for sharing your vulnerability, and your loss. And I I can see how all of that has led to the Chloe that we know and love now. Your work with Mental Health First Aid England and the way you show up for the community and the way you're showing up for people. Segue into the next question. What was the moment that you where you found your voice in inclusion?
Ooh. I honestly, I don't think I found it until maybe 2 years ago. I've had one, and I've shown up in spaces. I've shown up in good spaces. I've shown up in spaces that I thought were safe, but they weren't safe.
Hmm.
Um, and I I think in that gift part, sometimes used my voice because I was just so desperate to be heard, that I sometimes used it irresponsibly, or it may have caused harm, or actually has sometimes caused harm. And so I didn't find my voice. I had a version of my voice, or the voice that I thought people wanted me to use, but it wasn't actually my voice. Um, I think the thing about that pivotal moment for, that role as head of social impact was that it's probably one of the best jobs that I've ever had working for somebody else in the sense of the role. Because I really understood what it means to tell stories. And, for what I would say of being in advertising, and I've worked in so many different places, like, we haven't got enough time. I've been cooking since I was 3. Like this idea of community and bringing people together has been my story. This, need for really clear, transparent representation and what it means to belong has been part of who I am for so long, being in customer service and hearing so many people's stories from a retail perspective because they come to you, they let you into their world, they ask you to help support them. Bringing all of that into advertising, and also, at a time when the world, rightly or wrongly, after, 2020 and the murder of George Floyd and the reemergence of Black Lives Matter, some were for lip service, some didn't know what they were doing, some had always been about the work, some were really intentional, and some were prepared to try. And it was all of those things at once. Um, and I was in a position where I really felt like, okay, but this is a place where we could really do something and do some good. Um, I had the privilege of being able to work on the Virgin Atlantic account. It is my mum's favorite airline. We used to travel Virgin Nigeria, and it was green, plain green, everything. And we would go, when we had the opportunity to travel after my dad changed his job and travel internationally, and we'd go to like Disney World. Like I had, we call my mum the Black Hyacinth bouquet. I said what I said. Um, so
Is she going to listen to
yeah,
this?
it's true. It's family joke. She knows.
I love it.
I'm not disrespecting her at all. There was a show. There was a British television show from way back when called The Bouquets, and it was Hyacinth Bucket, who'd grown up on council estate. Her sister still lived there, but she was now married to a guy called Richard, and they lived in this like really nice, well-to-do cul-de-sac. And she changed her name from Hyacinth Bucket to Hyacinth Bouquet. We call my mum Black Hyacinth Bouquet because at work she was very refined and she spoke, incredibly good Queen's English. And she was so eloquent. At home, my mum was a full Niger babe. Like she will switch up into Yoruba as quickly as you possibly could. So I literally was like, it's the dichotomy of it all. I always used to find really, really interesting. And she, traveling with my mum, not the baggage part because she overpacks, but the actual like traveling part of my mum was always an incredible experience. Somehow we would be sitting in economy but eating first class food. Like my mum, if I have the ability to make friends anywhere, my mum is a masterclass in this. Like she just is so personable and everybody warms to her so much. And so I knew the brand. My godbrother Cameron, who was my first friend, our parents are best friends, and my parents and their crew of friends, they all had their first child together in the same year. So we're literally like months apart. And Cameron, he worked at Virgin Atlantic. He worked on the desk at Heathrow, and he worked for upper class. And he would, just it's in our blood, it's in our family DNA. So it was really, really personal. And I had met some of the team through the LGBT community and having the privilege to go to Attitude Awards and like meet them. And so I knew what it could be. I knew how it made me feel. I knew as a Black woman traveling on that airline, how safe I had felt on that airline. and what that kind of beacon and challenger and all that kind of stuff, you know. And so being able to work on the account, um, and being in moments where what I knew everybody had hoped for the body of work and what was being delivered didn't match. The energy didn't match. And so I was very intentional and would say it was the first time that I think in my role I risked my career. I risked my livelihood by fully using the power of my voice and saying, no, this is what we have to do. Um, and I worked with like the team at Lucky is incredible. There's an incredible business development director's name is Matt Sims. We sat next to each other, and he is this amazing gay man, and that helped. Didn't, you know, he is who he is, but I think the nuance of living in our community meant that we saw a different version of the world. And so the campaign was See the World Differently, which the team had collectively come up with. Um, and we got 14 versions of the human experience into this campaign. If I could have had 20, I would have had 20. And Matt managed my expectations. I'd be like, I want this. And Matt's like, you can only have this. I was like, okay, you know, we'll compromise. But it was such an incredible experience. You know, Runway on a Runway was, you know, looking at a gender neutral uniform policy. And, you know, I worked with the team, you know, insisted that they write the policy. It had to truly support those people. I gave the example that when I became a manager at Peter Jones, Peter Jones is, you know, way back when in the OOs, it's a very archaic system, the same as finance, the same as aviation. Women wore skirts and dresses, men wore trousers. And we got a pink uniform card. You're entitled to £300 for the year. You could have a certain makeup. I think you got two suits, navy blue and black, and then six shirts and some like accessory bits. And I wanted to wear the brand new, because Coast had arrived as a concession, and it was the sexy three-piece trouser suit, which was against policy, you weren't allowed to wear. So I had to go to Paul Hunt, who was our managing director at the time at Peter Jones, to get permission to wear a trouser suit. And then they changed the uniform policy at
That's amazing.
John Lewis. So that was my argument, was that we are doing this for nuanced experiences of people, but clothing has no gender. And this is where this part in the world, this part in the world, this part in the world, this is why we're doing this for all people, not just LGBTQ plus people. And it is 13 airlines and counting who've changed their uniform policy. And in the eyes of a brand, Virgin Atlantic and their main competitor, British Airways. That's what I came to do. That's the sum of my career to date then. And so that's the very first time that I really felt like I am using my whole voice, to really say what should be done and shouldn't be done, where I need to make sure that I am always acting as part of the team. Because in our industry, we are the custodians of people's stories. It is our duty to tell them responsibly and with accountability, but also to make sure that we tell our own stories too. And I think that's the very first time that I actually really told myself the same thing. It's time to tell your own story. It's been time. And I've struggled with it. Sometimes it's a confidence thing. The more you do it, the more powerful it becomes. But the beginning of this year, absolutely said it's time. And also, I'm going to pick something up. The irony today of all days, I have been a member of the Compass Club with Madeleine McQueen, but I go to her Me for Me luncheons, and she did one for International Women's Day last year, and then she did one for Christmas, and it is this wonderfully incredible space for Black mixed heritage women to love on each other, to celebrate each other, to share whatever. It's one of the like top 5 things that I go to every year. And last year it was on the 8th of December, and she made us write a letter to ourselves that she would post It arrived in the post yesterday. Didn't open it until this morning. Again, didn't actually know that I was going to do this today. And um, I was at my most broken that day and wrote letters to myself. And on the 8th of December, I wrote, not to read the whole thing, but I said, my darling Chloe, you are finally going to allow yourself to exist in your greatness. You are going to let your voice be heard. You are going to shine. I said some other stuff. And at the bottom of my letter, I said, I love you. You've got this. It is your time, Pinky.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, to your whole point, this is me. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, that's cool. Sucks to be you. But I don't know how to be any version of myself other than this one. This is me. Um, so I put all of me into everything that I do in many different facets. I don't know how to be anything other than this because of all of that. And I choose to do it with joy. I choose to do it with positivity. I choose to be in spaces that sometimes people think, why the hell is she there? But it's because that's where the work is needed. That's where we have to disrupt. If there is one thing that I've learned about the way that my light shines, is it is disruptive as fuck.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
like, and I've always had the ability to shine in the darkest of places. And that is just the way my life is designed. Sometimes you are given things that don't necessarily make sense to anybody else, will seem so dark and so much trauma and so much weight. And yet, what I receive in as equal measure and as equal abundance is more than I ever imagined.
But
And
I'm going to say this, but
yeah,
everything you deserve.
yeah, because I work for it,
Yeah, you do.
most people don't. Um, I'm not a I'm not a glory hunter. I'm not in it for fame. I don't want to be famous, honestly. I just want to be financially stable. You know, um, I'd hate like the idea of awards. I don't manage my own disappointment well. I understand the premise and the nuance of it. Um, and I have done things that most people have no idea that I've ever been a part of. And that wasn't important. But I've been doing this for over 25
Yeah.
years. And now is the time that I'm really going to have some fun
Yes.
and really enjoy it for myself and let 14-year-old Chloe run wild. Because I'm more than the wildest dream that I ever had. I had the privilege of going to a We Are Parables screening of the Book of Clarence. Oh my God, it was an incredible moment. Really changed my life because James Samuels, the director, phenomenal Black British director from Kilburn. Like, I literally said to the universe, I'm going to work with him one day. I am going to work with him one day. And he said, someone asked him in the audience, how does it feel to have achieved your wildest dreams? And he said, don't dream because then you wake up. He said, just be, just do, just keep pushing, just keep putting it out there, and it will eventually come to you. And I really took that to heart. I am more than anything that I can dream because I'm finally awake.
Love that. Chloe, thank you so, so much for sharing. Thank you.
And also, I would just like to say it's because it's you. I don't, I share, but I don't share unless I feel safe. So it's because it's you.
And I'm so grateful. And I see you I celebrate you, and yeah, love
Love
you
you
to
with my whole
bits.
heart. Yeah.
A society that's been taught half a history is destined to do harm.
A lot of people had not met another trans person before they came to Leeds in March 1974. Huge deal for them.
The award-winning Queer AF podcast is back with the history lesson you never had.
The first person who performs this instrument is a trans person.
Plus, a live event special with the cast of Sex Education.
When you're a queer person, you get asked so many questions. I'm just out here vibing, trying to pay me council tax.
Listen to inspiring LGBTQIA+ stories with a new episode of the Queer AF podcast every Monday this Pride season.
I want to get our stories told, and this is a good start.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day raid, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor.
Hey, quick fire.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Meet Joe Black.
Oh,
You meet Joe
straight
Black.
bam.
Meet Joe Black.
What about it?
Twisted, but you'll
Yeah, I get it.
basically that the devil came to earth and learned about love. And it was just phenomenal, spiritual, beautiful, romantic story.
I
Yeah.
can imagine tapped into
Meet Joe
that
Black.
side of Chloe.
Meet Joe Black is the film.
What's the
And
saying?
soundtrack.
And what's one?
Awesome soundtrack.
Is it?
Yeah.
Check it out. What's a saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
Saying that I live by, keep it cute, but keep it real. It's my
Oh,
trademark. Keep it real.
another t-shirt jobby. Another t-shirt jobby.
It's okay. They're coming. T-shirts, slogans. One that I would throw in the bin. Let me come back to one because I'm trying not to be messy.
You can be as messy as you want. Like, life's not perfect.
Do you know what? It's not so much the like one that I would throw in the bin. It's more like language is powerful. I'd like people to stop chatting shit. Like if you don't really believe it, but you just say it because it sounds good, please stop talking. I think that's more my thing. It's like I would like to throw in the bin whatless intention. There, I said it.
You said it. I said what I said. What has been the best adventure of your life so far?
Oh, parenthood.
Yeah.
It really it's a roller coaster. But one that I am so grateful that I'm on in the front car, hands up in the air, just going, oh, good. But yeah, parenthood.
I love how much you beam with joy when talking about the boys.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Oh, raw,
Pardon?
raw,
Raw.
emotional, real.
Raw, emotional, and real.
Oh,
I love that. Can see all of those things.
you're very
Thank you.
good. This is a gift.
Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Okay. I'm going to Cannes Lions for the Festival of Creativity in 10 days.
Hey, countdown.
Yeah, countdown. So it's a reclaiming. We were supposed to launch in Cannes last year. This year, I am everywhere across the footprint. We are delightfully in partnership with Cannes Lions and already building for 2025. Everything that I hoped for It Takes a Village Collective is coming true. So yeah. And also, I mean, everybody knows me. I am going to turn a look and then another look.
Oh, yes, you are.
It's going to be the week of the most gorgeous outfits. I really did just tell myself I'm going to do everything.
I love it. I do love it when I see you either at an awards or the pictures on LinkedIn, because you never
I'm
know
my
what.
parents' child. I'm my parents.
Yes, and I've heard you speak about them before and their influence when it comes to fashion, and I love it. I love pulling an outfit together, and I can really see the way that you put a lot of effort into it. What brings you joy?
Life and living, truly, cooking, talking, and building connection with people, my boys, family, friends. My future brings me joy.
Yes, yes. You are, you're an architect, and you can see how you are building your future. So clear to see. What takeaways do you have for anyone listening wanting to carve out a career or create a space in inclusion?
Um, be intentional, build from what is the impact of your work rather than the why. Oftentimes in this space, it comes from a frustration or a place of trauma, and it needs to be a we and not an I. Find your people, find people that help make this space make sense, and build a network, bond, connect, learn. No one does this work alone, and it takes collective community to be able to do that. Separate yourself from your work, because sometimes that's, especially in inclusion, belonging, representation, we sometimes do things based on our motivations and not what actually is necessary. And no one is ever finished. This is always a circle of education. It's always a place of learning. The work will always be necessary. It will just be a different nuance. So what I would say about that initial be intentional is, if this is the road in which you choose to come down, know that it starts, continues, finishes, and ends with work. You have to put in the work. You have to be prepared to take yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Oh, absolutely. I always say get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Learn about communities that don't represent
Yeah.
you, and understand what it means to take up space, to give up space, to occupy space, and to create space for others. If that is not your motivation, you do not belong in inclusion.
Snap. Final question, Chloe. Do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Um, I see you. I may not know you yet, but I believe in you. I believe in the rhythm and the power of what each of us has inside. Sometimes the universe has bigger things for us, and it might feel like you are at your most lost. But if I can be a motivation, a encouragement, or another lens from which you've seen, even with the darkest of things that happened, I still choose to live, still choose to put my best foot forward. I'm doing it as grown and sexy as I possibly can. And I know that for me, it's a beautiful sight to see. If you can just see a little bit of that, then keep shining your light. Your people will find you. Keep going.
Wow. Chloe, thank you so much for being you, for trusting me and sharing with me today, and for just being such a light. I think you're amazing.
Thanks, hon.
Thanks for being on Pause and Rewind. Everyone's gonna love this.
This is great. I love what you've built in this space, but it's you. It is you. That's why we've all come here, is because of what you've built, who you are, and your ability to always see the heart of us. So I am also going to pay you your flowers too, because this is an incredible space, and I wouldn't have spoken to anybody else like this.
I accept the flowers, and yeah, I'm always throwing them right back at you. Thank you so much. Oosh, I don't think that Chloe or I were quite ready for where that conversation was going to go. I think that's one of the things about these conversations and when you reflect is that sometimes you have to just allow yourself for things to come up, and sometimes the unexpected comes to the forefront. But we really, really lent into it. And I'm so grateful for the conversation. I think when Chloe used the words raw, emotional, and real for the way that she described her origin story, I there couldn't be three more perfect words, if I'm honest. There was so much that we covered. I think it was so beautiful the way that Chloe shared and reflected on the loss of her cousin and the pivotal role that he has played in her life and the way that she shows up today. And we don't talk about loss and grief enough, and so this was a real gift when it comes to sharing that experience. And as for the gift, Chloe's gift of knowing, I am so grateful to hear about that. That's absolutely fascinating and beautiful as well. There's no words for it really. And I'm so, Chloe's achievements, they speak for themselves. Chloe's such an accomplished, amazing individual. And I have no doubt that her goals, with It Takes a Village, that she's going to absolutely smash them, as she continues to do in life. And it was really beautiful to hear her talk about her experiences of motherhood and what that's brought to her, and also the way that her family have come back together, and navigated through and found a way through those difficulties to find love. Just wonderful, wonderful to hear. Grown and sexy. Chloe, I hope that you're able to continue that feeling of feeling grown and sexy and being you. You are wonderful. Another shout out for UK Black Pride, Sunday the 11th of August. I hope to see you there. It's such a beautiful event. Chloe, I'll definitely be seeing you there. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. What a conversation. Please like, subscribe, share, all that jazz, and stay tuned for more amazing guests like Chloe on Pause and Rewind. Cheers.